There we go, I just started. This is my first time doing this, so I wasn't sure exactly how to do it. So this is my trauma and substance use article review by Muriel Emerson. I found some images online to make it a little interesting. So on to the next slide. Article 1, Mood Pathology and Addictive Behaviors in Young Adults After Trauma. Traumatic experience early in life affect an individual's mood, pathology, and addictive behaviors. Both clients with a substance use disorder or depression report histories of severe childhood maltreatment or trauma. For the purpose of this article, trauma is an event so intense that it is impossible for its subject to integrate this experience into their brains. Substance use disorder and depression are two of the most common mental disorders worldwide and are considered connected. The studies within the article show a progress of connections over time leading to this study. The study found 500 young adults through social networks to participate. All participants were anonymous between the ages of 18 and 39 years old and stated that they had no recent psychotic episodes. These participants then completed a series of tests that evaluated their relationship with substance use, depression, and childhood trauma. The results showed that childhood trauma did have a strong impact on substance use disorder and depression. Addictive behaviors also seem stronger in males than in females, too. So, what did I learn from this article? This article reaffirmed a lot of information I knew from other courses and my own experience. There are a few things I found highly interesting within the article. One thing that stood out was a recent study that observed the link between childhood trauma, adult life psychopathology, and personality dysfunction. They found that these things were partially mediated by dissociation. The observation made sense to me. At the same time, I wondered how the person dissociated and in what ways can help a client come to terms with the childhood trauma they experienced. Another thing that was interesting was the correlation between certain diagnosis and substance use disorder. One diagnosis mentioned within the article was actually borderline personality disorder, which I myself was diagnosed with at one point. So, how this article relates to what I'm learning. This article relates to what I'm learning because it shows the connections between substance use disorder and trauma in young adult population. It describes the pathways in the brain that connect trauma to current adult life and how these things impact a person's quality of life. This article shows a progression in current studies through time. I feel like this article shows me that even though we have come a long way since deinstitutionalization, the mental health field is consistently improving in understanding of the human brain. How this information will help me help others. Well, I mentioned above how this information relates to what I'm learning. In the same ways, this information can help me be a good, caring, intentional helper. I can use this information to better understand the relationship between substance use disorder, depression, and trauma. This will also help me understand the human brain. Now we're on to the second article. There's a lot of information here to read and go through. So, this article discusses the relationship between post-violent conflicts and self-medication hypothesis. Sorry about that. Alcohol use disorder is likely to be increased during and after violent conflicts. When the study took place, Uganda had just ended a hostile lifestyle in 2006. They were rebuilding their community in a peaceful communal life. They were finally rebuilding their social, economic, educational, and health structures after 20 years. Uganda had endured 20 years of conflict and 10 years of displacement into internally displaced camps. Since Uganda had a complicated, specialized care, people were mostly left to cope, since they hadn't had that, people were mostly left to cope on their own. The study conducted in 2010 evaluated 368 rural families. The sample size had 304 males and 365 female participants. For this study, each participant was evaluated by a 30-item checklist The questionnaire included items taken from 2 standard checklists for traumatic experiences in childhood: the Early Trauma Inventory and the Childhood Trauma Questionnaire. Each participant also had a 34-item checklist for war and abduction exposure. All these questionnaires evaluated the guardian's socio-demographic, trauma exposure, alcohol consumption, and symptoms of alcohol abuse, post-traumatic stress disorder, and depression. The study supported the self-medication hypothesis and support designing and implementing addiction treatment in post-conflict context. Men and women both reported being exposed to an average of 6 different events from the family violence spectrum. The rate of abductions by the rebel forces that once controlled Uganda was higher in men than women. 68% of men reported being abducted by these forces. Of the 68%, 14% were forced to kill someone. Women showed a higher percentage of PTSD symptoms and depression symptoms. While women showed a higher PTSD rate, men showed a higher rate of substance use. In fact, men who reported more alcohol-related problems experienced less increase in symptoms of PTSD and depression, but an increase in trauma exposure. So what did I learn from this article? This article made me look at the effects of conflict, war, and poverty on a society. This article even posed the question, what does this mean for northern Uganda in the post-conflict society? The article didn't answer this question, though it was something I was wondering myself. I also began to wonder how America can improve its own support system for substance use disorder. This article made me think about how we can support these people in our community. It made me think about how upbringing and society plays a huge role in mental health and substance use disorders. So how this article relates to what I'm learning. This article relates to what I'm learning because it shows how societal factors can influence substance use behaviors. It also helped me learn what substance use disorders are like in other parts of the world. As I mentioned in my section about what I learned about this article made me ask a lot of questions about how we can improve support in America for individuals who have experienced this type of trauma. So how this information will help me help others. This information will help me help others because it will help me remember to keep upbringing, community, trauma, stress, and society as a whole in mind when referring someone to resources and helping them. It will help me remain a person-centered thinker and perhaps even connect them with appropriate resources to help them. So those were the 2 articles I read. I actually ended up reading a 3rd one because I forgot I even did the thing, so I had a 3rd article, but that's it. So I have my list of resources on the back here. So I did the article titled Drinking to Ease the Burden, a cross-sectional study on trauma, alcohol abuse, and psychopathology in a post-conflict context. That was the one on Uganda. Depressive symptoms and addictive behaviors in young adults after childhood trauma, the mediating role of personality disorganization and despair. That was about the first article. And then I added this one because I did mention intentional helping a lot, because I really like that phrase. And this book was actually really interesting. So I had to reference that. And then I referenced my images, and that is it. So I hope everyone's doing well. Thanks for listening to me. Bye.